Hello, welcome to Brazen Exchange. I'm your host, Vanessa Emadi. Stay tuned. 87 athletes qualified to represent Nigeria at the 2024 Olympic Games, and they participated in 12 different sporting disciplines such as swimming, taekwondo, badminton, canoeing, and so forth. Sadly, there were no medals won. In today's episode, we'll be rehashing the grand event and also sharing a general overview of the sports industry in Nigeria. To discuss this with me and offer expert analysis, I have invited the current secretary of the Sports Writer Association of Nigeria, Adamawa chapter, who is also an international media consultant, Mr. Ephraim Opanachi. It's good to have you here, sir.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. It's a pleasure being here.
Great, thank you. So let's get right into it. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate sports development in Nigeria? And what are the main challenges that the industry is currently facing?
If 10 would be the highest mark, which I suppose, um, we'll be somewhere around number two at the moment because in terms of plans have always been there. Very lofty plans have been laid out, but in terms of execution and having a development plan or path, that's what has been missing over the years. And so that leaves us right at the bottom in terms of that. We're not doing well at all because it is said when you don't plan, you're already making a plan. You've already elected to fail. And that's what has been the trajectory of sports development in Nigeria. If you look at it over the past 25 years since we had this return to democracy, it's like things just continue to nosedive for us. So that's where we are, 2/10.
Thank you so much. So, in your view, how effectively do the NOC and the federal ministry, how do they prepare our athletes for the Olympic Games? So, I'm aware that there was a budget of 9 billion naira, and they sent the athletes to Germany 2 weeks before the games to prepare. So, just how do they prepare these athletes?
Talking about preparations, when we hosted the All Africa Games in 2003, Nigeria built what was at the time one of the most expensive football stadia in the world. We spent about 360 million US dollars to build a stadium to host the All Africa Games in 2003. At the time, just to lay the foundation, at the time we spent $360 million to build a stadium. Uh, Camp Nou in Barcelona was built, that particular project they have now was built uh, with a sum of 250 million euros. So we're spending 360, they're spending 250. 7 years later, in 2007, we spent 360 in 2000. They're spending, of course, 250 in 2007. The Bet's Net Stadium in China was built, a further year later in 2008. They spent over $400 million building the Bet's Nest in China to host the Olympic Games in 2008. But we had spent 8 years earlier 360. They spent over 400. What's the seating capacity of the National Stadium in Abuja? It's just 60,000. What's the capacity of the Bird's Nest in China? It is 90,000, although 80,000 permanent seats, then 11,000 adjustable or seats you could remove, which you did remove after the games. What's the capacity of the new camp in Barcelona? 105,000. So we spent so much money building a stadium that was 60,000 in capacity, not compared with what others were building. That's number one. After the games, what happened? We had a magnificent games village. I've been there a couple of times, the National Stadium in Lagos, in Abuja, even the one in Lagos. But what happened? You there, you can answer that question better. What happened to the games village in Abuja? You go there today, it's an eyesore. You don't have a games village anymore. Athletes are supposed to be prepared in what you call training camps, whether they are in open camping or they go to closed camping. When did Nigerian athletes go to the closed camping? They didn't really have a closed camping if they were going to Germany 2 weeks before the games. So that is how we planned to fail. 12 billion marked for the games, 3 for Paralympics, 9 for the main games. And then you came back without a medal. Over 100,000 US dollars spent per head on each athlete, while Jamaica spent just $2,000 on each athlete. When you look at the contingent they had, just about $2,000 per head. We spent over 100 or thereabouts on our athletes, and over $80,000 on each athlete. We didn't get a single medal. So it's not about churning out funds at the last minute. It is about having a strategy. We don't have where our athletes can stay for high performance. We don't have when they go into that campaign for high performance, which is what the Games Village in Abuja should have served for. But even the Games Village, we have effectively dismantled. So that's the genesis of our problem. I went there when it was built. I was marveled at what I saw in Abuja over 20 years ago. Then just take down the calendar down, and then we don't have a place where athletes can train. I look at the games, the shooting. We have people who can shoot very well in Nigeria. We don't work on those ones. We have lots of water bodies in Nigeria. We don't work on all of those ones. We have people who know how to swim. Go to the Niger Delta, go to Benue, go to Kogi, come to Adama. People know how to swim in these areas. We're not harnessing all of those talents. So we effectively planned to fail.
And even from what you said, we it's been told that despite everything that happened, you ask for the budget towards the later part of June, and then you're given the budget at the early part of July. Just how were they expecting to process all of these things? Because we could see that there was a lot of errors that took place. There was talk about mismanagement, corruption, even the fact that some people were complaining of not receiving good support. There was poor training, visa issues, all of these things going on at the same time. So my question now is, what is your take on the lapses and the errors that affected Team Nigeria's performances? We could see, for instance, Favor Ofili, she wasn't able to compete in the 100-meter race due to administrative mistakes made by the AFN and the NOC. And in the post she made on Twitter, she said, "It is with great regrets that I have just been told I will not be competing in the 100 meters at this Olympic Games. I qualified, but those with the AFN and NOC failed to enter me. I've worked for 4 years to earn this opportunity. For what?" What is your take on that?
For Philly, I was particularly heartbroken for her because this is the second time it's happening to her. It happened in the 2020 games, which was held in 2021. A young teenager qualified, made the time required for an Olympics, and yet you did not allow her to run because Nigeria didn't get the requisite number of tests. That's what you call out of competition testing. And there are a number of tests you're supposed to undergo as an athlete to ensure that you don't have, because there's some banned substances that athletes take, and if it's in your system for some after some time, it's not detectable anymore with certain kinds of tests, the type they conduct from time to time. That's why the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, and the IAAF, International Association of Athletic Federations, have these tests. You submit your blood sample, and they scrutinize to ensure you don't have these things that are banned in your blood. Nigeria did not make these athletes go through those number of tests. And a couple of them were disqualified at the Tokyo Games, which was held in 2021. Ofili was one of them. 3 years down the line, the same mistake is happening. They say lightning doesn't strike twice, does it? But in Nigeria, it strikes again and again and again. Except you're also using Bolt, who could, light up the Betsnet Stadium and break world records like he did. We're not learning anything. You don't have athletes go to a games like that. You saw what happened to Ofili in the 200 meters finals. Let's assume she had a previous experience in 2021. She would have understood how it feels like or what it feels like to compete and lose a final. Assume also you gave her room in the 100 meters and she was able to qualify for the final. She will also have the feeling or what it feels like, to compete and lose. Then maybe by the time she's on the 200, which is her strength, she would then be able to say, okay, this is how you run when you're going to get a medal. But instead of having that experience before now, they allowed her to find that out right in the finals. So Nigeria, in my estimation, missed an opportunity to win a medal with favor. Another athlete, Aniete, who did not participate for Nigeria, she went to the games in 2000, which held in 2021. You saw her win the
Like
silver medal
Beyonce, yes.
for the United States of America, and she absolutely. And then a few seconds later, you saw her there with the American flag, and people are chanting and singing, "God bless America." Why not God bless Nigeria if we do things right? Look, I've been to Virtually all the sports festivals that I've held in Nigeria in the last 15 years, I've been to every single one of them. I've been to virtually all the youth games in this country, regional games as well. I've been there. You know what we do there? When we go to these games, we cheat. I say it in capital letters, we cheat. We go for under 15 games. You have people who are over 20 running as under 15 because the states want to win at all costs. You go for youth games meant for under 15, you find people who are 25 elite athletes running at these games. So if you're talking about in terms of as a progressive level, the states are not helping matters. The various federations from across the states are trying to cheat because they want to win at all costs. In 2003, Nigeria won the All Africa Games here in Abuja. Does it surprise you that that's the only All Africa Games Nigeria has ever finished tops? We did hosting to win, and at the end, we hosted and won. So until we move away from these, permit me to use this word, madness of trying to win at all costs, we will not get the results we are seeking or the results we seek. States, federations need to move away from the syndrome of winning at all costs, develop the athlete. If it's for under 13s should run. There's a progression from 13 to 15 to 17 to become an elite athlete. You don't go there and feature people who are 28 in these games. That's the major problem from what I've observed from all the events I've covered in Nigeria. We want to win at all costs, and it doesn't help us in any way.
And it's also what you said about how they're more interested in the money and doing everything at all costs to win. But what about the fact that they are also focused on sports like track rather than building or investing in the other sports discipline that we have? Can you imagine for the first time we had somebody who represented us in a canoeing event, a cycling event? Imagine if we had something, a federation who was in charge of all of these other disciplines. Like you said, we have people all over, young people all over who are talented, who are athletic. Why not gather them around and look for how to train them, invest in them? Because the things that we saw at the Olympic Games, it was just terrible. It was terrible to say the least. Because how is it that your athletes are going to prepare 2 weeks before the games and then they are having issues with visa? They are having travel restrictions. And then the ones that are finally there, there's no support for them. There is no nutrition, there is no nothing, there's no healthcare even for them because they complained about these things. So it is terrible what is happening. And now looking at the fact that Team Nigeria went and then they came back with no medal, which is really, really sad to say. But now, what do you think went wrong and where could improvements have been made?
Thank you very much. I love this type of question because it's at the heart of the problem we have with sports. And like not just sports, other sectors of the Nigerian economy. Many times we like quick fixes. Unfortunately, in sports, quick fixes don't work. Sports requires patience, it requires a system, it requires a program to work with. As I speak with you, some countries have started preparing for the 2028 Olympics and some even for the 2032 Olympics. There was this particular, uh, thing I watched during the Olympics. There was a lady who won the ran the 400 meters race. She was an English athlete, and back home in her little county, they were all waiting. They gathered around the cinema just to watch her race to ensure that they cheered her on live in her local community. The lady was 21 or is 21, and they had monitored her progress from when she was about 6 years of age. So they felt after 15 years of working with these athletes, the 400 meters winner at the just concluded Olympics, she's from England, and everyone, female race I'm talking about, they felt okay, it should be her time now to win the games. So her athlete from her high school, her coaches, her co-athletes, her coaches, and all the people she worked with through primary, high school, down to when she went to college, and all of that. They worked very hard. I'm talking about an investment of 15 years in the life of a child who was 6. After 15 years, she is an Olympic champion. So to directly answer your question, the things that have always gone wrong, we never plan for anything. We never plan. Gymnasts, when you start recruiting them, I was watching a particular floor event at the Olympics. It's called a floor event at the gymnastics event. And the lady was 14 or 15. She's about 15 years of age. And I looked at her. She started very, very, I tried to dig up. She started very, very early from when she was in kindergarten. They started training her how to be a gymnast. So it takes time to prepare for these things. And then just 9 years down the line from when she was in kindergarten, she's already competing at the Olympics. Before she even got to grade one, she was already, you just add up the years. She's now competing at the Olympics and then winning medals at the Olympics. Simone Biles of the USA, you saw she came back and she won a couple of
Got the
medals this time
silver.
around after, the
Yeah.
debacle she had exactly at the last games. People go through a lot. So federations need to plan. We are not planning. You're talking about focusing on certain events. I talk about people in the communities who have lots of good hunters who know how to shoot guns. They hunt animals, they kill animals. There are games, there's shooting. There's shooting there. There's fencing. There's throwing of darts. There's even breaking added to the Olympics now. We have lots of young men and women who know how to do the thing with the skates, the skateboarding. A lot of that, the skateboarding, there's breaking. Are you telling me that in Nigeria we cannot have 5 people that will go there and compete and be among the top 3 in the world? I don't believe that. What I believe is that we don't take the time and the pain and the patience to identify them. Because you don't do that, you don't get the results. All the people I'm mentioning are those who the various countries and federations began working on them when they were about 4, 5, 6. And then in 10 years, they get the result. But what do? We go around an event, we organize an event for under 17s, and then you bring a 28-year-old to come and compete as an under 17. Of course, she or he will win the event. By the time you take that person to compete where people over 20 are competing, the person is already past his or her prime. There is a prime stage in the life of an athlete. Until we identify that, you catch them before they even get to their teenage years. In their teenage years, you expose them. Look at Leslie Tebogo, the man who won the 200 meters race in from Lesotho, the first man to win a gold medal from Lesotho. The mother was born in 1980. He's just 21. He won the 200 meters gold. For the past 2 years, as a teenager, he's been making very, very good times, returning very, very fast times. And we all knew this was about to happen. And he had the extra motivation of a mom who's no longer with him, spurring him on. Eventually, he brought home the gold. When last did Nigeria get to the Olympics and win medals? In 1996 was the last time we had, a haul of medals, about 6 of them, the best ever we had. Where are Nigerians not being found at the latter stages of the event? So, in a nutshell, we are focusing on money. There's a lot of corruption in the system. Yes, so much corruption because you can't explain how you're spending over 80,000 US dollars to 100,000 US dollars on one athlete while you have no medal. And a country that is spending $2,000 or $1 to $2,000 on an athlete per head has 6 medals from the games. So our priorities are not right in Nigeria. We don't have round pegs and round holes at the federations. We don't have a plan from the regions, from the states. We don't have a plan even from the government. I just told you the national stadium in Abuja and the
No,
games
no,
village. You are in Abuja there. At the games village,
no,
is it
no,
still
no
fun?
more.
Pardon?
It's in a terrible state.
It's gone. It's gone. It's dilapidated. Do you know that Nigerian clubs that even applied to play, to use the national stadium as their home game for CAF competitions? The Confederation of African Football said the national stadium in Abuja is not fit to host CAF matches. I'm talking about club football, not continental elite African Nations Cup. That the Abuja National Stadium cannot host matches for a club side in its current state. It's in it's a sorry state. This was the pride of Africa. This was the pride of Nigeria. Each time you come to Abuja, you just want to go to the place where the stadium is located. You want to go there, near the city gate there. You want to go around there. And then the games village. I repeat, that's where our athletes are supposed to be kept for high performance trainings. But because we don't want to foot the bill of having to feed them, having to put them on a diet, we decide to always run around. The minister himself said every couple he requested was given him, and yet he failed woefully. That's the problem. You have to plan, put these athletes on stipends, put them on salary so that as you go to the office every day going to work, athletes have to get up and go to the stadium or the sports complex and work. That way, they'll have dignity in labor. That way, they'll know, that, okay, they are cared for. That way, they know they have a profession, not just to call them around and then they have to perform magic. It doesn't work that way.
I read something. I wasn't sure if it was this Olympic or the last one, but it was about a young man who he trained with his coach all through the time he was preparing for the Olympics. And when it was time for him to travel abroad, they didn't make provisions for his coach. And he said, "How do you expect me to come to this place? You are not giving, there is no proper place for me to train. You did not bring my coach to guide me." He actually did all his preparation over there without a coach, and then you expect him to come home with a medal. He actually didn't get any medal, and I just felt bad for him because this is somebody who has trained him all his life, someone who has guided him, and then you now take him abroad without any proper coaching, nothing. Many of them went without being coached, and then how do you expect them compared to their counterparts who have been preparing for not just months, for years, who have all the right equipment, the training, everything that they need? It's really terrible. Nigerians in diaspora, they won medals on behalf of other countries. You spoke about Annette. Annette, also the story of Annette last in the last Olympic Games, the thing with the drug test. It wasn't because of that she was disqualified because the AFN, they didn't carry it out for the athletes, and now she won a medal for USA. And the amazing
Yeah.
thing is, this was USA's first medal in the hammer throw, and she won for USA. We also had the likes of Yemisi, who won a
Yeah.
gold in shot put for Germany, and Germany hasn't won this in over 28 years. Actually, that these are Nigerians. So, how significant is the issue of talent drain with Nigerian athletes seeking opportunities abroad? And what strategies can we use to retain and better support our local talents?
The local talents should find a future in the country. If they do find a future in the country and with the various federations, they don't need to go out, because the ultimate aim of any athlete is to stand on the podium and have his or her national anthem played, apart from the monetary gains and endorsements that benefit them along the way. So if we want to stop talent drain, as you call it, then we must do the right thing. Why do you have athletes not on salary? That's number one. Why do you have athletes not on stipends? Why do you have athletes that are not on allowance? Why? Why do you have athletes that cannot eat a good diet that goes along with the training regimen that they operate? They need resources to do all of that. And when you keep them in a closed camp, you can ensure that you monitor what they eat. So athletes would continue to go outside of the shores of this country as long as they feel their needs are met. They would only stop going when their needs are met. So as long as their needs are not met, you're not going to be able to stop that, because it's not just with athletes. We have the health sector where, it said that 67% of all the trained doctors in Nigeria, a whooping 67% of trained doctors in Nigeria go to the UK.
Better life,
That's
yeah,
where they go to, because
for
that's where
better
they get
opportunities.
good pay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So 67. So we are left to scamper with just over 30%. Don't forget, some still go to the Americas. So what percentage of doctors do we have here? And these are the very good ones that are migrating out of this country. So it's the same thing with athletics. She won silver 3 years after she was not allowed to throw for Nigeria because we didn't test her. And then it's not she was not cheating. She didn't have any drugs in her system, but the rules are clear. You have to have X number of tests before you're allowed to compete. She didn't have them. Now she's a silver medalist. You also put it out clearly. The first time America had gone there, you mentioned the German,
Missy
gold
as well.
medalist, also with a Nigerian name and all of that. You can stop that. You can stop that. So, to answer your question clearly, we are not going to be able to stop that if we continue with these paths of just moving athletes days and weeks before games and getting so much extra codes in the name of games preparation. You're not going to stop that. People are going to go to where they get more money. As unfortunate as scenario is, that's the reality. People want a better life for themselves. So if they see themselves as athletes and there's no future for them in Nigeria, like the doctors, like the lawyers, like the engineers, like the trained accountants, like those who work in the health sector, they will leave. So if you don't want them to leave, keep them happy. Do we have the capacity to keep them happy? That's a question for another day. But I believe we do have the capacity to keep them happy if we really want to make these athletes happy. We have everything in this country, but we don't just want to spend the money that is needed to be spent on these athletes.
Okay, I think this will now lead me to my next question. So, is the current funding of sports development in Nigeria, is it enough? And what changes would you suggest to improve budgeting and financial support?
The current funding, depending on where you're looking at it from, in principle, the funds allocated look
Yes.
big, right? They look big in principle. But the challenge again is the actual amounts being voted for do not get down to the athletes or those who should use the funds. That's the major problem. So it's on two fronts. On one hand, the funding is not totally enough. It's not enough to cater for the kind of results that we seek. If we seek the kind of results that you say you have 5 gold medals, 10 silver medals, 15 bronze medals, this funding cannot give us that. But the funding we have, conversely, on the other hand, can give us a couple of medals. And even at that, the funding is not properly administered. So you have two problems in one: poor funding, right? Not enough for the big medal haul. That's where we are at. And then even the limited funding we have is being mismanaged. So if we tackle mismanagement, which is where we are at the moment with the small or poor funding we have, we will get some medals. And then if we then, on the other hand, make more funding available, it will mean we'll have to plan. What I mean by that, you want to win a medal in, let's say, archery, right? You need to have like a 10-year plan. Go around and get these boys who are 10 years old and teach them how to do that. I can assure you, in 8 years of keeping them in one place, you go around Nigeria, get the best 10 archers, organize high school competition or even primary school competition, get the best 10 from there, merge them with the best 10 you have in junior and senior secondary school in Nigeria, the best from across Nigeria, 20 of them. Take my word on this, Vanessa. Get the 10 best you can get from high school, the 10 best you can get from primary school, camp them for 8 years. You will have an Olympian with a medal, either it's gold or silver or bronze on his neck, not at the 2028 games, but at the 2032 games. Are we ready to do that? That's what I mean by funding, because keeping these athletes in one place means if they're in primary school, you have to fund their education, place them on scholarship. So while they are schooling, they are also pursuing their career. We have a sports university. What are we doing with that? We have a sports university. What do we do with all of that? So these are the things we need to focus on. Those institutions should be institutions where the very best from across Nigeria are kept. They should be placed on scholarships as it's done in other countries. If you have a sports university, for instance, the athletes that go there should be on scholarship. So they don't worry about paying school fees, they don't worry about tuition fees. They should also have meal subsidies. They go and eat based on the subsidy arrangement or the scholarship arrangement you have for them. So you gather them in one place for 6 years and then have a stringent regimen for them. You will have Olympians who will win medals for you. But the thing is, we don't have the patience to plan for that. Then, on the other hand, having dealt with the issue of funding, you go to the issue of administration of what we have. There's so much there's so much corruption in the industry today that people who have no business in sports are manning various federations. Get those guys out, get people who can work into the system, and then ensure that the funds are judicially used, because I don't see why you would spend, if this 9 billion, right, was spent
Mhm.
from January, and why
Early,
do you release 9
yes.
billion in June or in July when the game starts in July? Why do you release 9 billion at that time? So what funds do they have for preparing for the games? You need to have all of these ready from January and not having it, in June or in July where they're going for the game. So those are the two things. On one hand, you need to invest more, fund more, place athletes the best you have on scholarships, and on the other hand, ensure you have people who know the job. There should be proper monitoring. If the minister has fretted away 9 billion naira, there should be accountability. You don't just keep quiet like that. So this culture of not accounting for what we get appears to encourage those who go away with that. So that should be the issue, the focus.
Thank you, Ephraim. Something you were saying, it reminded me of what I was reading on Twitter recently, or rather X, and it was about students who in universities they go to represent the country in different sporting events, but then when they come back to
Yeah.
school, they get lots of carryovers. They fail them. They say because you represent Nigeria, then you're not here to take the tests, you're not here to take the exams, then we're going to fail you. What do you say to that?
Just like we're saying, there should be specialized training institutions or institutions of learning for athletes. That's why you have sports universities. They understand the regular schedule, right, of the athletes. But you go for a 1 month tournament, by the time you're back, you have exams written, you have CAs conducted. Our system doesn't really support that very much at the moment. Yeah, a couple of institutions understand that they support them, but you can't have carryovers when you went for national assignment. You shouldn't be carrying courses over because you went for a competition. That's what I'm saying. The athletes have to be sent to special schools. If they are in regular schools, it is the responsibility of the various federations which they represent to write to those institutions to ensure that they have a special time where they can carry out their exams. They could even write tests online. They don't have to be present or physically in the classes to write the test. Or they can give them, somebody's in Germany, you come back, you can have your exams scheduled. We have to think out of the box. That an athlete is representing you at the moment should be a thing of pride for you. So I don't see why you should even talk about having carriers or such an athlete. So it's about planning. We have to plan to ensure that the institutions and the organizations liaise properly, and that way you handle that issue. If they cannot meet or get those services there, then transfer them to specialized institutions where everyone knows their calendar. That way you won't talk about carryovers again. That's how to deal with that.
Thank you so much for that. Now let's move to women in sports. So now we saw, I would just really like to highlight that the women this year, they did really well. We have the likes of Rena Wakama, the Nigerian American basketball coach, who led the first African team to reach quarterfinals. And it's amazing because the people they played against was the best team in the world, USA. And it was just an amazing thing because at the end of the day, she won the best coach at the Olympics for guiding her team to the quarterfinals. So, what specific challenges do female athletes in Nigeria face, and how can we enhance support and promotion for women in sports?
Yeah, Wakama did a very good one for herself, and I dare to say, if she hadn't gotten America and France, she would have been in the medal games because the teams she beat, we saw them going all the way to the semifinals, and the two teams she lost to were the ones that played the gold medal match, USA and France. They met in the finals. It was dramatic, and you look at the margin of loss between the game she lost to America and the one she lost to France, very close games. So she
Very.
really gave a very good account of herself, and kudos to her and her team. It's just sometimes in sports you need an element of luck. If she were in another group, she wouldn't have had to meet the US in the quarterfinal stage. She would have had to meet the US in the semifinals and probably, who knows, gone as far as the losers final or the final match. Again, she had France in that group. Think
Mhm.
just do a flip of it and then say she was in another group. She'd have had to deal with other teams and then probably top her group and avoid playing the US. So, but because we had France there, but it was a very good outing she had. And then
It
women in
was.
general, if you look at if you look at women in general, over the past couple of years at the major games, the female athletes have been doing Nigeria proud. The first gold medal Nigeria ever won was by Chioma Ajunwa, a leap of
Yeah.
7.12 meters. That same year, Falila Dogunkoya won a bronze medal in the women's 400 meters. At the time, it was an African record of 49.10 seconds. Back then, of course, that record has been shattered. Mary Onyali finally won her individual, medal, a bronze medal in the women's 100 meters. 200 meters, beg your pardon. So it was a very good outing we had at the 1996 games in Atlanta. And you come down again, we had Blessing Okagbare doing so well for Nigeria before her ban. Unfortunately, again, these are things that could have been checked if we had proper care for these athletes. Blessing was an elite athlete. The Jamaicans respected her. They feared her at some point. But how does an athlete move from such glory, to be caught in a web of drugs? Constant care and monitoring would have detected the first time that substance got into her system to ensure that there was no repeat of whatever it was she inadvertently took before she was banned for life for some years and then later on for life. We saw Toby Amuson winning the 100 meters and hurdles, setting a world record just 2 years ago. We saw her, very unlucky at the just concluded game. So the Nigerian athletes, particularly the females, have done so well for Nigeria over the years. And to strengthen that, it looks like the women in Nigeria over the past 30 years have won more medals. Blessing Obrodudu won the silver medal for Nigeria, at the 2020 games, which was held in 2021. So over the years, it's been a very good one for the Nigerian ladies. Going forward now, I believe that we should focus on those strengths. We should focus on those strengths. I'm not saying give preference to one gender over the other gender, but I'm saying if you find your strongest selling point in athletics, the ladies have done a lot better than the men comparatively over the years for Nigeria. That should be an area where the government should strengthen. There should be a lot more funding. Those athletes that are coming up like that should have more sponsorship. They should have more endorsements. They should have, of course, they should be placed on a better pay arrangement so that that motivation is there. The same way for the men who are also doing well. So whoever it is that's working for you or representing you should be encouraged, irrespective of whether the person is male or female.
Thank you, Ephraim. Now, to round up our conversation, how can we improve sports in Nigeria, and what recommendations would you give to the NOC and the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports Development to better prepare our athletes for future sporting events?
I gave a couple of insights earlier in the show, and I said we need to have people placed in places where they can develop naturally, or where you can condition them to develop. How do I mean develop naturally? There are people who are in their habitats. We have people who are farmers, who are hunters. They are good at certain things. You can take your camp to them in those areas. For instance, you go to a community that is known for hunting and shooting very well in Nigeria. We have these communities, we know them. You can move your camp down there, spend a month there, have a mini competition there. Go to a village and have that competition there where people know how to shoot. Then you can get your elite shooters or your good shooters from there. That way you can start having a process of bringing out those who are very good. I talked about swimmers earlier on. Go to the villages. We have very good swimmers there. Bring them up and then train them to know how to swim professionally. We have people who go under the water for 2 hours in Nigeria, 2 hours. We have people who go to communities where they mine sand. Yes, they go underground and dig out sharp sand. Somebody goes, spends 2, 3 hours, not at a time. He goes and comes. He keeps diving in. In a day, he dives for about 3 or 4 hours and he spends several minutes underwater, holding breath. These people should be trained. They should be harnessed. These talents should be harnessed. That's one way. Going to the grassroots and identifying the talents and bringing them out. That's step number one. Step number two, we need to have a place like I called the Destroyed Games Village in Abuja. We must have one. We can't do without that. If you've thrown away the games village, sold the houses, or done whatever it is you've done with the house, or allocated them, or whatever it is you've done with them, get these places back working, because athletes need to be kept in places where they can be monitored. Athletes shouldn't be bothering about accommodation. Athletes shouldn't be bothering about tracks. Athletes shouldn't go to the Olympics and be looking for bicycles or whatever it is. Athletes shouldn't go to the Olympics and be bothering about whether their blood samples have been taken. Athletes shouldn't be going to Olympics or competing for you and be bothering about what supplements they took that was not allowed or prohibited. They should be told. Sometimes these things happen because of ignorance. But when you have them in a place, you have them like in a school, and then they should be educated so that they get empowered. We've seen athletes that leave Nigeria go pick up Olusoji Fashoba, for instance, who was the African record holder for Nigeria at some point. After a while, he said he retired from sprinting for Nigeria because he realized that after running for Nigeria, all he gets is maybe $5,000. He doesn't get anything more than that. and he abandoned athletics. African record holder Fashuba, some years ago, before that record about 10 or 14 years was eventually broken. 14 years or so, 15 before his records were broken. Olusoji Fashuba. He left sprinting for Nigeria. What did he do? He found himself an engagement outside the shores of his country where he's consulted as a consultant. That way, he offers specialized services and he gets paid, I think, six figures or whatever figures he gets paid. And he has been able to make a living for himself. Do we think about the future of these athletes? What happens to them when they retire from the sports? When they cannot run 100 meters in 10 seconds or 11 seconds? What happens to these athletes? Athletes are taking the initiative, thinking for themselves, and it shouldn't be so. They should be empowered. They should be educated. When athletes see a future beyond athletics, they will give their lives for it. When athletes see that the country rewards them, they will give their lives for it. When athletes come to a point when they understand that, yes, when I stop running, there is something I can do for my country, they would give their all. But what do we do today? It looks like all we want is to get people who can win us medals. And that is not working. It has never worked. It's not going to work. So that is the way to fix sports in Nigeria. What are the resources you have? The athletes are your best resources. Work on them. Ensure they are good, ensure they are happy, ensure they are educated. What again do you need? You need resources and planning, proper planning. Plan very well. I talk about the abandoned game village in Abuja. Revive it or build another one somewhere else and make sure it doesn't die or rot like we saw or we have continued to see in Abuja. Then beyond that, get managers who know how to manage. Have a 10, 20-year plan. We want to win 15 medals in 2040 games. That's how to go about it. This is 2024. In 16 years' time, we want to win 40 medals at the games. Then have a massive rolling plan. We have national development plan. We have rolling plans. We should have a sports development rolling plan that will culminate in Nigeria winning 40 medals in 16 years. Vanessa, I tell you, it is possible when you plan it that way. And then above all, when people fail, like they have failed right now, let heads roll. Do not condone ineptitude and failures. For me, that's the way to go about development. Your primary resource, the athletes, must be cared for progressively. They must see a future there. And then you must also cater for them while they work for you. Give them a good life. The planners should have a plan. The implementers should be questioned if they fail to implement it. Then again, there should be proper monitoring of all that we do. How do you do that? First of all, identify the talents, work with them, and develop them. If all these things come together, which I believe we can, but unfortunately we're not doing, if we get the man who has the will to do that, then one day you'll sit down there and see Nigeria winning 10 gold medals at an Olympic Games. That's my take on this, Vanessa.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ephraim. Even looking back, I remember the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games where athletes in Nigeria had a crowd fund for money travel to train. And then we have a situation that happened recently in, I think, it was Philippines. The medalists that won in Philippines, they are being assured of house, free food, free medical, health, everything. And I'm like, how can we go from crowdfunding to actually securing the future of our athletes? Now imagine the example you gave, Olusoji, was that his name? Now imagine someone like Olusoji.
Yes.
Imagine if Nigerians took
Yeah.
care of him. Imagine if they took care of him. He would still be this consulting he's doing. He would do that for the athletes that we currently have in Nigeria because he's now very
Absolutely.
well taken care of. But we don't have that. And it's so sad. Even when I read about the things that the medalist was going to receive, because just for the fact that he won a medal for Philippines, outstanding, outstanding. Like he doesn't have to worry about food. He
But
doesn't have to
you
worry
see
about
that
housing.
that's an exceptional example because even in the states, the athletes get I think $21,000 for a gold medal in the US. I'm not so sure. I've forgotten the exact figures. So giving him close to a million, that's really outrageous. But then it shows you how much how much joy they had to do that.
Yeah.
There are countries who give athletes $5,000 for winning medals. So, but that's what we give here in Nigeria. Some seven, some even less than that. Some 21. I think America's about $21 or so. They give to their athletes for winning these medals. So that's quite fair enough. But we always, even bonuses for matches we don't pay. It's a whole
Mhm.
rot in the system, Vanessa. And
Thank you so
to talk
much.
about specifically the, all right, We don't need
No,
to,
please
just
go
to wrap
ahead.
it up, we don't need to do
Yes.
crowdfunding. We don't need to do crowdfunding. We don't need to do crowdfunding. No, we shouldn't be doing that. We should be able to pay for this. Not in terms of saying, okay, you're paying for them. No, we should be able to appreciate them for what they give, what they've always given, and what they continue to do for Nigeria. That way, there is a level of pride people will represent you with. I think that's also something we should take into cognizance. There's no quick fix to sports development in Nigeria. There's no quick fix. Everything about it has to do with patience and planning. Identifying athletes takes patience. Working on them takes patience. Developing them takes patience. Preparing them to be peak performers takes patience. The funding, government also has to be patient because you will not see results in 2 years. You have to be patient to see the results. And that's what it looks like we do not have in this country. We want to spend 10 billion and see 5 medals. In sports, it doesn't work that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ephraim. I think the crowdfunding even speaks to the rots in the system because we look at the case of Yavi. Yavi won gold for Bahrain, but she's originally Kenyan and she initially wanted to run for Kenya, but she was told that there was no spot for her. She had to secure a spot by I think paying $2,000 or so, and she just thought that that was ridiculous. And then she went to run for Bahrain, and she ended up winning a gold for that country. So it just speaks to what's in our system, and it's good that you highlighted all these things. Thank you for sharing your time and your expertise. It's been a really engaging conversation, and there's so many things that people can get from it. So could you please share your social media handles for the benefit of our audience?
Okay, you can reach me on X at Yad Blast or on Facebook at Ephraim Okbanachi. Those are the mediums through which you could reach me on Facebook, on social media the most, Facebook and X, Yada
Okay,
Blast, and then on Facebook, Ephraim Okbanachi.
so is there anything that you're currently working on that you'd like to share with us? Any projects? Okay.
Right now, oh, okay.
No, go ahead.
I hope to have a work a book out soon, very soon. It's been done for quite a while now. Just a public unveiling of a book of adventure, someone's real life adventure, very soon.
Okay, okay. So we were looking forward to that. Thank you so much. It was wonderful having you here. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I'm your host, Vanessa Emadi, and I'm available on LinkedIn. You can also reach out to me via email at vanessawritings@gmail.com. That's VANESSAWRITINGS at gmail.com. Till next time on Brazen Exchange. Goodbye.